Hello, everyone. Welcome to our webinar on the EB-5 program, Options for Obtaining Permanent Residency Through Investment. My name is Bashyam, and I'm here with my law partner, Amy Coates. We work with the law firm of Bashyam, Spiro and Coates with offices in Raleigh and Minneapolis. How are you doing, Amy?
I'm doing well. I'm excited to hear this webinar because, as you know, I handle most of our family-related cases. So there's going to be some new things for me to learn today, too.
Fantastic. Hopefully you'll learn something. So let's move on to the outline for today's webinar. First is we're going to go over the EB-5 overview, which is basically what are the basics of the EB-5 program that you need to know, how to apply for a case under the EB-5 program. We're then going to go over what a regional center is, and we get a lot of questions on regional centers from various investors around the world, so we'll touch upon that in some detail. We're going to go over statistics, what everybody needs to know as far as what the approval rates are for these types of cases. And finally, we'll go over some fun and informative examples.
Okay, Morali, before we even get started, now don't some people look at this as sort of buying an immigrant visa, buying a green card?
Buying a green card?
Mhm.
I mean, we're going to touch upon that in the regional center context, which is, some people can look at that as buying a green card, but at the same time, you're investing money into a U.S. business that's actually creating jobs. So it's not a one-sided transaction. So it's hard to say you're just buying a green card, right, Amy?
Yes, gotcha.
So, what are the basics of the EB-5 Immigrant Investor Program? Well, it was established by Congress back in 1990. The purpose, of course, if you're pouring money into the U.S., is to stimulate the U.S. economy through job creation and capital investment. Um, the government authorizes up to 10,000 EB-5 visas a year.
Now, Morali, are those even close to being taken up every year?
No, actually, I was going to mention that might sound like a very low number, compared to the number of immigrants who apply for cases to come to the U.S., but it hasn't even been close. It has been increasing, and we're going to touch upon that a little bit later in the webinar. And, obviously, the program is administered by the United States Citizenship and Immigration Service. So you might wonder, why do you want to use the EB-5 program? Well, number one is everything else with our U.S. Immigration Service right now, or most things I should say, are subject to quotas. And in the employment-based category, there's significant backlogs for certain nationalities in certain categories, and even in the family-based area, right, Amy? I mean, this.
Yeah, that's true.
So if you've got money saved up, and you want to actually apply for a green card in the United States, you're not going to be subject to a quota under the EB-5 program. All you'll be subject to are just regular processing times, which right now for the initial process could take 8-9 months. But again, we'll go over that in a few minutes. um, I stated here in the PowerPoint presentation, you control your own destiny. And that goes back to what Amy and I were just talking about as far as having to be sponsored by an employer or a family member. In this, you're not sponsored by really anybody. You're sponsoring yourself. Um, it does apply, like many cases, to your spouse, and any of your children under the age of 21. The beauty also of this is that you can be geographically mobile in the sense that you can invest in a business or buy a business anywhere you want in the United States, as far as where you want to live and work. Or if you're going to invest in a regional center, again, we'll go over that in a second, but you can pick one that is anywhere in the United States that you want to live. And for entrepreneurs, I personally think this is a fantastic program. If you've got money and you want to invest in the United States, this is a very, very good, avenue to invest that money, control your own destiny, start your business where you want it, and try to get U.S. permanent residency through this EB-5 program. So, let's see here. EB-5. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our webinar on the EB-5 program, Options for Obtaining Residency Through Investment. I'm here today with Amy Coates, who is my law partner at Bashyam Spiro and Coates LLP. How's it going, Amy?
It's going well.
It's going well. We have handled immigration cases, corporate and family, in North Carolina and throughout the United States and the world, with offices here in Raleigh, North Carolina, and Minneapolis, Minnesota. The outline for today's webinar is as follows.
That's close.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to our webinar on the EB-5 program, Options for Obtaining Residency Through Investment. My name is Bashyam, and I'm here with my law partner, Amy Coates. We work with the law firm of Bashyam, Spiro & Coates, LLP. We handle corporate and family immigration in North Carolina, Minneapolis, and actually all across the United States and the world. How's it going, Amy?
Oh, it's going well. I'm really excited about today's webinar, Raleigh, because as you know, I handle most of our family-based cases.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to our webinar today on the EB-5 program, Options for Obtaining Residency Under Investment or Through Investment. My name is Bashyam, and I'm here with Amy Coates, my law partner at the law firm of Bashyam, Spiro & Coates, LLP. We handle corporate and family immigration all across the United States and the world. Amy, how's it going?
Oh, it's going very well today. I'm excited about this webinar, Raleigh, because as you know, I handle most of our family-related immigration cases. So I think I'm going to learn something new today.
I mean, some of your family clients must ask about this program,
Well,
right?
they do. They do, and I always refer them to you because I don't have answers to their questions. So
Good. So you could ask me some good questions today.
yes, I plan to.
So let's go over the outline of what we're going to discuss today. First we're going to go over the basics of the EB-5 program. What do you need to prove in order to qualify? Second is, if you do qualify, how do you apply for it and obtain permanent residency or conditional residency? The third is regional centers. We get a lot of questions every day from foreign investors, asking about investing in regional centers, and there's a reason why it's so popular. We'll go over that, in a few minutes. And third is, when you apply, what are the chances of you actually getting approved? And we'll provide some statistics that we've, compiled over the years. And finally, some good, fun, and informative examples.
Okay, Morelli, let's get one thing straight right off the bat. Now, people have a perception that this EB-5 is just buying a green card. What would you say to that?
I mean, there's different ways of applying for the green card under the EB-5 program, and we're going to touch upon this. Usually, when people say buying a green card, they're referring to regional centers where investors are investing money, and basically taking a passive role in the investment. And by doing that, that regional center can apply for their green card. But at the same time, that money is also providing a U.S. business with much needed capital in order to, create jobs in the U.S. So it is a transaction, and there is a benefit to all the parties involved. So I'm not so sure about the whole buying the green card thing.
Gotcha.
So quickly, what is the EB-5 program? It was established back in 1990, which seems like, an eon ago. The goal, obviously, with more money coming into the U.S., was to stimulate the U.S. economy. Right now, the U.S., they allow 10,000 EB-5 visas a year. And Amy, do you think that number actually gets hit?
Well, it seems like a lot to me of people. So I would say no, not considering the amount that has to be invested.
See, actually, that number seems very small to me, considering the number of people who actually apply for permanent resident status in the United States. But
well, when you compare it to the other categories,
yeah,
right.
When you compare it to the other categories. But Amy's right. It does not get hit, and we're going to go over those numbers here shortly as well. So why use the EB-5 program? As many of you probably know, if you're going through the employment-based process, you generally have to be sponsored through an employer, unless you're a person of extraordinary ability or, someone who's doing something in the U.S. national interest. If you're going through a family member, Amy?
Oh, yes, those are heavily backlogged.
Heavily backlogged too, right?
Takes a long time, depending on the category.
Right. So generally speaking, there are backlogs in these things, and with the 10,000 available visas for the EB-5 program, that, as Amy had mentioned earlier, that don't get used up every year. You're not subject to a quota, and that's one big advantage of using this program if you've got money, to invest in the U.S. You're basically controlling your own destiny. Applying for a green card under the EB-5 program does apply to the investor spouse, and any children under the age of 21, like most other green card cases. The beauty of this also is that you can be geographically mobile, meaning that if you're going to invest in a business or a regional center, you can do it wherever you want, wherever you want to live. And I guess we'd recommend Raleigh, North Carolina, because it's really pretty here year round, right?
Yeah, yes.
And as far as entrepreneurship goes, and if you are a business owner or a serial business creator, I should say, and you've got some money to invest in the United States, this is an excellent program for you to start that business, apply for permanent residency, and create jobs in the U.S. So what are the requirements to qualify for the EB-5 program? Number one, you must invest in a commercial enterprise, meaning you either create an original business, from scratch, or you purchase an existing business and restructure or reorganize it such that a new business results or a new commercial enterprise results, or you expand an existing business by 140% of the pre-investment number of jobs or net worth. That's a mouthful,
Now, Morali,
Yeah.
is this completely separate from the regional centers?
This is completely separate from the regional centers, and we're
Okay.
going to go through the regional centers in a second. But going back to this, a traditional program here, or you retain all the existing jobs in a troubled business that has lost 20% of its net worth in the last 12 to 24 months. Now, on that last part there, about the 140% or lost 20% of its net worth, etc., obviously, that's going to be more complicated because you're going to have to get, a business attorneys, economic consultants, financial analysts, etc., involved to be able to provide the USCIS with accurate information that you meet that criteria. So
Wow, and it's especially risky. I mean, buying a new business or creating a business and having to create 10 jobs and invest the money, that's risky anyway.
right.
But then to decide that you're going to buy a business and basically commit to increasing it by 140% or saving it, one or the other is
Absolutely. And
something
you're
different.
putting your money in also, it's going to be at risk. I mean, there's no guarantees, as far as applying and getting it approved. It's money that's at risk, so you're taking that chance.
Right.
What we've seen just in practice is that most of the EB-5 cases we've done are either creating an original business, buying an existing business or restructuring, but mostly creating an original business, or going through the regional centers. Again, we're going to touch upon that here in a few minutes. The next big thing that you've got to prove is that whichever way you're going to go on the new commercial enterprise, you've got to create or preserve 10 full-time jobs for qualified U.S. workers. And, we've got a lot of questions on, well, can they be 1099? Can they be part-time? You know, can they be, H-1B workers or foreign workers? Do they have to, what qualifies as a U.S. worker? And it's really a, U.S. citizen or permanent resident.
Okay,
Full-time,
so that's pretty
W-2.
narrow then.
Absolutely. Capital investment, how much money do you actually have to invest in order to qualify for this if you meet conditions 1 and 2? Regularly, it's an investment of $1 million. So if you're going to, go to item number 1, which is create an original business or purchase or reorganize, it's going to be $1 million, plus 10 full-time jobs. However, if the business that you're going to start, buy, or reorganize is going to be in a targeted employment area, then the investment is going to be $500,000, which is half. But the 10 full-time jobs is still a requirement.
Targeted employment area. What is that, Morali? That doesn't sound too good.
Yeah, targeted employment area is not a phrase that I particularly care about, but that's what the Immigration Service uses. But here's what it means. We get a lot of questions on this. And it's a little hard to define, but generally speaking, it's a rural area where you have less than 20,000 people living, where the unemployment rate is, like, I guess, 140, 150% of the national average. And it's a location that's designated by the Office of Budget Management as being a targeted employment area. In fact, uh, you don't have to guess these things on, if a location is target employment area. I actually got a question just yesterday from someone who wanted to know where targeted employment areas were in a certain state. So I just Googled that and put the state
Hmm.
in, and you'll find that a lot of the state agencies have compiled this information already.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah, so that's something to keep in mind as
So
well.
that's one thing you don't really have to prove. You don't have to work too hard to prove that because if they're already on the list,
The
then
resources are already there. I mean, we've listed some helpful websites here in the PowerPoint, but don't try to figure that out on your own. State agencies in every state have already designated what those targeted employment areas are. So let's say you qualify for this, that you think you're going to qualify for this, and you want to, give it a shot. How do you apply for it? Well, the first step is to file what's called an I-526 application, and with that application, you're going to have to submit supporting documentation showing the source of your funds. That whether it's $1 million or $500,000, it has to be your money. It can't be a loan. And the reason that we say source of funds is the Immigration Service wants to know that you did not obtain those funds by any criminal means. So it really has to be well documented.
it has to be your money, but it can be a gift, can it not?
Yeah, absolutely, it can be a gift. As long as it's an irrevocable gift, meaning that there's legal documentation showing that um, they're giving it to you and they're not going to get it back from a legal perspective.
And I mean, if that's your, let's say it's your father or your parents giving you sort of an early inheritance, how would you even prove that?
I mean, you're going to have to go to an attorney, wherever in the country that you live in, and have legal documentation that proves that that is under law in that country an irrevocable gift. Um, I mean, personally speaking, I think gifts make these types of cases a little bit more complicated because you do have to prove that additional step that this isn't just a family member doing a family member a favor, and the Immigration Service is aware of these things. So if it truly is a gift or an inheritance or something like that, there's going to be legal documentation to prove that. You're going to have to provide that, but that from a legal perspective is fine um, to prove the $1 million or $500,000. You're going to have to also submit documentation showing that you have created those jobs or are in the process of creating those jobs. And the reason I say or is because if the case is approved, it's going to be conditional for 2 years. So let's say that I want to start a business. I start the business. Let's say I invest $600,000 of my own money, um, create 6 jobs for full-time U.S. worker jobs. I want to go ahead and apply for the EB-5. I actually can. I don't have to go. I don't have to meet those requirements up front. I can apply for the case, and as long as I'm able to establish to the Immigration Service that I will, have invested the $1 million or created the 10 jobs within a 2-year period, they can still approve the case and make me a conditional U.S. resident.
And so this part's interesting to me, Raleigh, because this is the one place where the EB-5 category overlaps with the marriage-based cases, because U.S. citizens who are married for less than 2 years, their foreign spouse gets conditional resident status, and just like this, at the end of the 2-year period, you have to produce evidence to prove that they've continued to share a life together. So there's a
It's
lot of
Yeah, it's
similarities.
basically very similar to that, which is at the end of the 2-year period here. If that 2-year conditional residency is approved, you're going to have to prove by filing the I-829 application that the business is still in existence, your money is at risk, the full amount has been invested, and the 10 U.S. Full-time U.S. jobs have been created as well. And after you apply for the I-829 and provide that documentation and information, if the Immigration Service approves the case, you will become a permanent resident.
What if the business just happens to fall upon hard times just like a month before the conditional residency is about to expire and you have to let a couple of people go? But let's say you had created those jobs for most of the time. Do they take into account how the business is done for most of the period, or at the moment you
The
file?
moment you file. you know, which seems a little unfair, but at the same time, you know, the goal of this is more long term than short term. So they're going to take into account, have you done it at the point you're filing the I-829?
Very risky.
It is very risky. But most people who are going to be your entrepreneurial types investing in companies here have been through risk before,
Hmm.
and probably can accept it. So what are the two types of EB-5 programs? One is direct EB-5 investment, which we've been kind of talking about here for the last few minutes, which is buying a business, starting one or reorganizing one in the United States. And the other way of getting, green card through the EB-5 program is through a regional center. So what is a regional center?
Well, that's when you buy a green card, right, Mariah?
Very funny, Amy.
I'm joking. I'm joking.
So going back to what a regional center is basically an approved legal entity, whether it's public or private, that coordinates investments in compliance with EB-5 statutory, regulatory, or precedent decisions. Boy, that sounds really lawyerly. So let me break it down for you. It's a company in the it's a business in the United States that is created to invest in projects in the United States, such as, just for example, hotels or resorts or any other type of business. And this entity that's created to invest in these businesses to make them succeed or just build them from scratch um, takes investment either from U.S. investors, foreign investors, or both. And if they want to become a regional center to take, foreign investors with the $500,000 limit, which we're going to go through here in a second as well, they have to apply to the Immigration Service to be designated as a regional center. One of the risks of a regional center just a year ago was that it was going to expire, I believe, this year or the end of last year. But the government did extend the regional center program through September 30th, 2015. So that's good news. So what are the advantages of a regional center? Number one, you're not required to start a business. And that's key. And that's why, we get a lot of questions from foreign investors on investing in regional centers to obtain residency. Not only are you not required to start a business, but your investment is not $1 million. It's going to be $500,000. And as far as starting a business, one of the requirements under the direct EB-5 investment program is that you have to not only start, buy, or reorganize, but you also have to manage. But with a regional center, you can actually be a completely passive investor. As long as you put in the $500,000, you can just sit back,
So as long as you invest in I guess the regional centers, they've been through some kind of process with the Immigration Service. Does that mean you don't even have to submit any documentation? Just the fact that you've entered into a contract with a regional center and given them $500,000?
Well, if you don't submit any other documentation, then you're not going to get permanent residency, right, Amy?
Well, that's what I wondered about the regional center.
No.
So the regional center provides the documentation that you need.
Absolutely. And we've met with a number of regional centers, and they have all this documentation already, basically put together for these types of cases. And what they'll do is you invest the $500,000, you become a passive, investor, legally a passive investor in that business. You don't have to do any of the day-to-day management. That money, the regional center will invest along with all the money that, accumulate from both U.S. and other foreign investors into whatever project that they're going to, undertake. They will provide the investor with all the paperwork necessary from a business standpoint to apply for the I-526, which we mentioned before. So it's a partnership from an immigration standpoint. They provide the investor with the documentation they need. The investor provides them, with the money that they need, and the regional center then takes the money and invests in the project that they want to do. Also, with the regional center, with direct EB-5 investment, let's say I want to go start a business, I have to create 10 direct jobs, meaning that they actually have to be my W-2 employees. But regional centers, the way they're able to do this is even indirect job creation counts. So Amy, what does indirect job creation? What does that mean? Give me an example.
Well, I guess that would be like someone who's not a W-2 employee but a contract worker.
That's correct. So let's say that my regional center is going to build a hotel, in downtown Raleigh. Um, all the jobs that are created from that project, even if we're hiring a janitorial company to come in and take care of everything, all the people working there would be considered indirect jobs.
Okay, well, that's good.
And that's excellent. But with the regional center, let's say that I have 10 investors, foreign investors. We have to create, or we have to prove through economic analysis, that we can create 10 jobs per investor.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So that's something to keep in mind as well. The Immigration Service sets aside 3,000 EB-5 visas for regional centers. Even that is not hit every year, at least not yet. There are well over 250 regional centers around the United States. That number is actually growing as well. It's a great option for retirees. Let's say that you've accumulated a lot of money outside the United States, and you're getting a little older, but you don't want to retire where you're living. This is a good option for you if you want to live in the United States.
Well, at what point do you get that money back?
Yeah, that's a good question, Amy. From what we've seen, generally speaking, the $500,000 is going to be tied up for a 5-year period. That's what most regional centers require.
And that's in the contract.
Yeah, absolutely. You're going to be signing subscription agreements and a number of other things.
So that's pretty much decided up front.
It's decided up front. Anybody who's going to invest in a regional center, make sure you've done your homework. We're going to go through that in a second as well. But it's usually a 5-year tie-up on the money, and one of the disadvantages of applying through a regional center is your rate of return is going to be fairly low. So even if you get your money back, and the reason I use those words, even if, is because your money is still going to be at risk. The regional center can fail, so you need to keep that in mind as well. But 5 years, get it back, or some of it back, or all of it back, with a very low rate of return. But at the same time, if it all works out, you get your permanent residency in the United States as well.
Well, Marley, these regional centers, they've got to go through quite a long process, don't they, of documenting, their business model and all of that before they're granted regional center status.
Absolutely. I mean, applying for regional center status, that's basically a topic in and of itself for a different webinar, because we could sit here and talk an hour about that. But there is a rigorous process regional centers have to go through. I believe it's the I-924 application that they file. The filing fee is around $6,000 or $7,000. They've got to provide the Immigration Service with evidence of what are they doing, what's their geographical location limitation, what type of jobs are they going to create. They've got to provide economic, and financial forecasts to the Immigration Service.
Are they required to follow up with CIS on a regular basis?
Yeah, there's a reporting requirement on that.
But just because they've been granted this status doesn't mean that they're that every regional center is going to be a great center to invest with, does it?
No, like most things, they're good and bad, right? And so with regional centers, it's going to be really, really crucial for the investor to ask the right questions to determine, what is a good regional center for them. Amy's right. They're going to be good ones. They're going to be mediocre ones. They're going to be bad ones, So what do you want to know when you're actually investing in a regional center? Number one is, who are the people who actually formed that regional center, and what are their reputations? What kind of track record do they have? I think that's really, really important. Not just with regional centers, but with anything, What is the regional center's business model? What are they actually investing in? Is it going to be hotels? Is it fairly stable, given the economic climate that exists at the time that you're investing? What is a regional center's economic impact methodology? That's, I guess, unless you're a financial person, you really wouldn't know what that means. But regional centers do have to actually submit this type of information to the Immigration Service. And some of these methodologies are better than others. Like one is called RIMS, and RIMS 2, and a number of other ones. that are fairly good, actually. So you want to ask them about that and have them explain that to you. Does the regional center rely heavily on direct or indirect job creation? Um, the more it relies on direct job creation, even though you can create indirect or use indirect jobs, the better you're going to be. So you want to ask them that question as well. Amy had brought up the period of time and investors' funds will be used. We went over that. Generally speaking, and we're not speaking for every regional center, but just from what we've seen, it's usually a 5-year period. I think this question is probably one of the more important ones outside of the track record for a regional center business wise, which is how many cases have they filed for investors and how many have been approved. That doesn't just mean the first part of the process, which is the I-526, but more importantly, how many I-829s have they filed to remove the conditions on residency? Because as Amy brought up before, things can go wrong in that 2-year period that you're a conditional resident. So, how successful have they been on getting those conditional, removing the conditions approved? The other thing I would just pay attention to, if you can, when you're talking to the regional center principals, and we've handled a lot of these cases where we put investors in touch with the principals of the regional center so they can be direct conversation, they can ask questions, and just pay attention to what they say, which is anybody who guarantees anything is probably not being completely truthful. So if they say that the investment is safe, it's guaranteed, you'll be fine, those types of words, I would probably think twice about investing in that regional center because, number one, by law, the money has to be at risk, in order to get a case like this approved under the EB-5 program. But outside of that, nothing in life is guaranteed, right, Amy?
That's true. Now, are most of these regional center principals open to meeting with potential investors?
I mean, the regional centers we've dealt with, absolutely. I mean, they were very open to actually flying out and meeting with the investors in other countries.
Okay, so they've actually flown out.
Yeah.
I was going to say, if I'm going to invest $500,000, I believe I want to meet some of the people who work at the
And
regional
I
center.
think it's a great strategy. I mean, I think you want to do your homework on this because it's going to be 500 grand, which is a lot of money, in 5 years, and it's going to be your life in the U.S. Whether that works out or not. So you want to just definitely do your homework and meet and talk to these folks. The other question I think is important is what percentage of the project are foreign investors? So with a regional center, I say, it's good that from a business standpoint, if they have a very, very large number of, actually non-foreign investors, which is U.S. investment, and a smaller percentage of EB-5 foreign investment, because that way that there's a lot of stake in the business or in the game, and it's
They
more
haven't
stable.
set it up just for
They
the
haven't set
purpose
it up
of
just for the
becoming a
purpose
regional center.
of being a regional center. And I think I was talking to you about this, Amy, about that regional center in, I think, Chicago that was considered to be a sham. They took in, millions and millions of dollars in foreign investors' money, and promised them to apply for the EB-5 application, and really nothing went through. And
Mm.
the principal of that organization got indicted recently. So the regional center risks, I think we've kind of gone through this a little bit anyway, but we'll touch upon it as well. Number one, if you don't do your homework and you pick one that um, doesn't do a good job with its project, or even if it's a good one, it can fail. It might fail to create the jobs necessary to have you approved for permanent residency. Investments do fail, and sometimes there is no return on the money. That's always a possibility, which we touched upon before as well. Regional centers, even though they are certified originally, can also lose their certification if they don't maintain the standards required by the government. As any business, a regional center can also go bankrupt, which means you lose your money, or parts of it, and you can't apply for residency or removing your conditions, which we touch upon here as well. and you must remember all of the money is always going to be at risk. So, approval rates. Between 2005 and 2012, the approval rate for I-526s is 81%, or right around there. Sounds pretty good, right, Amy?
Yeah, I'd say so.
You know, so between 2005 and 2012, the I-829 approval rate is 84%. Sounds even better, right?
Well, you take into account that these are also, they're the companies that people have started on their own. I mean, if you were giving me these statistics and they were all regional centers, I wouldn't be too impressed.
Right.
But if this includes businesses that people have started on their own, because I would not expect a lot of the regional center cases to fail. I know they can, and of course that's going to be a risk.
Absolutely, that's absolutely right. The reason probably, in my opinion, the rate is so high is because when you're putting that much money into something, whether it's a direct investment through your own business or through regional center, generally speaking, you're going to do your homework.
Right.
So, um, as far as and this stat, I think is even the more interesting one, which is we talked about the 10,000 visas available under the EB-5 program. In 2005, only 332 526 cases were filed, which is a minuscule number, when you're looking at 10,000 available. In 2012, 4,156 cases were filed.
Wow.
I mean, what a big increase. Why do you think that is, Amy?
Well, I know you think it's because of the backlog in the employment-based cases. I'm not so sure because I have a hard time seeing a lot of people who are employed with a company, having $500,000. I mean, like just say your average software engineer who's backlogged for 5 or 6 years, having $500,000 in his back pocket to invest in a regional center. I mean, maybe a few of those people would open their own business, sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think, my opinion on it, just based on what I've heard in, talking to potential investors, is around the world, there's more money to be made, and a lot of different economies have improved. People are making more money, but perhaps they don't want to live in certain countries, because of the conditions on the ground. There might be great economic conditions, but might not be great personal conditions.
Yeah, and I wonder if it's just because people are just becoming more aware that this category even exists.
That's a great point, and it very well could be that, and I'm sure that is, because the regional centers have increased. I think the media has focused on it a little bit more, the more articles.
Even I saw an article in the News and Observer. This is our local paper in Raleigh about a family who had gotten their green cards through the EB-5 process, and that's why I joked around about buying a green card, because that was sort of the tone of the article, which I didn't really care for. But
you read the News and Observer, Amy?
I sure do. I glance at the headlines anyway.
I-924 applications. We talked about forming a regional center, which Amy had brought up earlier. Stats on that. It's very, very difficult to actually get approved as a regional center, as it should be.
I'm glad to see such a high denial rate.
Absolutely. So 90% of these cases get what's called request for evidence, and that's where the Immigration Service asks for more documentation, information, etc. And generally speaking, I'm not a big fan of request for evidence. Are you, Amy?
No, because we have to do a lot of work on them.
But in this context, I think it's actually a good thing.
It protects the investor.
It protects the investor. And 60% plus of these I-924, not the EB-5 cases, but the actual application to get regional center certification, get denied. So if you're looking to form a regional center, talk to an attorney over this and make sure you know what you're getting into, because that
you're going to waste a lot of time and money.
You're going to waste a lot of time and money. I mean, regional center, it is a business. You've got to market that, and there's a lot that goes into it. So definitely speak with qualified counsel. Examples. So, Amy, let's say Client A came to the U.S. under an E2 investor visa program. The initial investment was $200,000, but over the course of 2 years, Client A has invested an additional $500,000 and created 8 jobs. What do you think? What are the options?
Well, I mean, I think they could go ahead and try the EB-5 program, and I mean, not even a regional center, but they need to create a couple more jobs somewhere along the way.
Yeah, I mean, that's a broad answer. Um, what this investor can do is one of two things. One is the business in a targeted employment area? You know, number one, if it is, they've already met the investment amount. All they got to prove is they're going to create 2 more jobs, um, and they can go ahead and file the I-526 with proof that they will create those 2 extra jobs in a 2-year period. If it's not in a targeted employment area, they can obviously apply for under the direct EB-5 investment program, by proving that they will invest another $500,000 to create 2 jobs in a 2-year period,
Or
or
add some more
or
money
add
into
more
the
money, or
investment.
just wait, and make it $700,000 and then apply. Example number 2. Client B came to the U.S. on an F1 visa and later got an H1B visa. He is in his 4th year of H1B status and is aware of the backlog in the employment-based categories. However, the client is from a wealthy family and has significant stock holdings in his father's company. What are the options, Amy?
Well, this is where I would say regional center.
And why would you say regional center?
Wealthy family. I'm sure you can get it. I mean, he has significant stock holdings. He can liquidate some of that, or
Exactly. And that kind of goes a little bit back to your question earlier about the gift or inheritance, right?
right.
Yeah. Yeah, that's definitely Amy's right. That regional center, a good one is probably the way to go on that one. Third question or example. Esther lives in South Korea and has accumulated savings of $500,000 over the course of her life. Unfortunately, North Korea's leader, Kim Jong-un, has moved Masudan missiles to a firing facility and has threatened South Korea with nuclear destruction. Kind of a relevant example, huh, Amy?
Oh yeah.
Esther wants to get the heck out of there. What should she do?
Well, I mean, again, it just seems like a regional center is the easiest thing.
Yeah. In that situation, if you want to get the heck out of there, you've got $500,000 in savings that you're willing to tie up for 5 years with a low rate of return. Regional center is the best way to go. I mean, there are obviously a lot of other examples, but those are just a couple to cover it. So now we will take a couple of questions from everybody, and
Okay.
all you have to do is just type that in to that little dialog box here at the end.
Raleigh, go ahead and forward the screen to our email addresses. So if listeners have any questions that they would like to directly, you can also feel free to email Morale or myself, and I will quickly forward your email to Morale if you email me. But you're welcome to email me. Those are our email addresses there.
Yeah, someone's asking a question about whether, the jobs that are created have to be W-2 full-time salaried employees, and obviously yes, right?
Okay. Mm-hmm.
I think that's all the questions we have for now, and we are running out of time. So thanks for joining us today. And as Amy mentioned, if you have any questions, feel free to email myself or Amy. And do join us on Facebook or Twitter, which is facebook.com/Bashyam Spiro or twitter.com/Bashyam Spiro. We provide a wealth of immigration information on those social media sites. Thank you, and we hope you have a wonderful afternoon.